My name is William Harrison, and I am the Society for Broadcast Engineers Chapter 37 DC Chair, together with Eric Hain, Chapter Co-Chair, Fred Willard, Chapter Treasurer, and Rob Bertrand, Chapter Secretary. We make up the board of SBE Chapter 37. And you are all joining us today for the monthly SBE Chapter 37 meeting, which is a good presentation by Dan Merwin of BroadcastTelecom on software-defined WAN, which I can't wait to learn even more about. Before we get to that, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Society of Broadcast Engineers, and everyone here hopefully is already a member. If you're not a member, this is my 30-second membership pitch. If you become a member, you get out of it what you put into it. There's lots of educational resources, both on the website in terms of webinars and self-paced study courses, as well as networking opportunities and other people in the industry who will happily try and help you along your way to learn things that you do not already know. I speak from experience because there's still a lot of things that I do not know that I'm still trying to learn from some of you. Other than that, I can tell you that the opportunity to register to take a certification exam for the SBE, you have to register by June 14th in order to take an exam in August. So if you have an inkling that you might want to register, you have a few days left before the deadline. There's some upcoming national events that I want to pitch. June 12th, there's a webinar on modern AV, creating more with less. June 26th, there is an ATSC 3.0 update. And July 31st, there is a Designing for High Availability webinar. I also want to pitch the SBE's Leadership Development course taking place in Pasadena, California in October, I believe the 8th through the 10th. And many other national events shall be coming up, I'm certain. In terms of local events for the chapter specifically, after today's event, our next meeting will be July 8th, and that will feature Mike Pappas from Orban doing a presentation on getting the most out of your processor and your audio chain. That's actually going to be a hybrid meeting. We've gotten permission to use the meeting room over at Cavell Mertz, which is in, I want to say Springfield, Virginia. It might be Alexandria, Virginia, but it's in Northern Virginia. August 12th, we have a presentation virtual only from a company called Cloud Junction. And they haven't really given me a title, but I've seen some of the stuff that their products do, and I'm going to call it Bandwidth Aggregation and Guarantees. September 20th, I believe, is the date we settled on for the picnic. October 7th, which is our tentative date, we're trying to put together a shared antenna roundtable. We're trying to get representatives from JamPro, Dielectric, ERI, and Shively American Amplifier all in person in order to give a presentation about how they typically want to do combining systems, and then how they typically do a shared antenna in some of their designs. And we'd follow that up with a roundtable discussion moderated by someone, possibly Gary Cavell. I'm putting his name out there in hopes that he'll just say yes and won't be able to say no. But I'm hoping that that turns into a really good event. There seems to be a lot of interest in shared antennas and shared sites nowadays, so maybe we can further that along. We're still looking for a subject for our November meeting, so if anyone has any ideas, please contact someone on the board. And December 16th will once again be our joint holiday party with the SMPTE DC chapter, which I don't think we've settled on a venue yet. Fred or Eric, if you have information to the contrary, please let me know.
Yeah, we were going to, last I heard, we'd like to go back to Busboys and Poets if you guys are okay with that. Seem to be good turnout and decent parking, and it's really close to you, Will. You just have to go out your back door.
I confess that I do like the convenience.
Yeah.
But in any case, once we get more details firmed up about that, I'm sure you'll see emails come through from me. I apologize if anybody thinks they get too many emails from me. I try and limit it to sending about one per week, just notifications of meetings and reminders for meetings and other special events. So if ever you feel I'm sending too many, please let me know. And then finally, I always want to take a moment to thank our chapter's technical sponsor, which is Jeff Williams from YellowTech. Many of you have some of YellowTech's products, either mic arms or monitor mounts, or even some of their standalone handheld interview mics. They also make some great USB interfaces for AES and for analog audio, as well as many other products, including indicator lights. Other than that, I'm going to ask my fellow board members if they have anything that they want to bring up.
I think I covered everything that, you covered all the meetings. Well, we were considering going together with DC Prime, the DVG all-day symposium in November. So more to come on that. They don't have a venue yet. They're looking for a hotel splash venue that they can handle their all-day event. So we'll let you know about that. They do have a date, though. It's the Tuesday, I believe 20th of November.
The second Tuesday, I think, is the 18th. So,
yeah, you're right. It is the 18th. So that's the date. They're still working on the venue, because it appears that all of the hotels want you to book the whole hotel to get the venue, and they're just not up to that.
Fair enough. Eric, I'm looking in your direction to see if you have anything you want to add.
Not particularly, other than it's probably, for those of you who are in attendance as enjoying the meeting, if there's anything that you would like us to try and put together, we've got most of the rest of this year put together, but next year we'll be here before we know it. So if you have something that you'd like to see, or something that you could help present, we'd love to hear it. We always have to keep coming up with ideas. We have a small group of things that come up every year. We always, right around NAB time, we have the SBE General Counsel gives a presentation. It's generally a Zoom meeting on new broadcasting in the law, and of course we did it this year, and with a new chairman at the FCC and everything, there was plenty to talk about. Next year, I'm sure there will also be plenty to talk about. So that's usually our meeting in April, I think. It kind of depends on where the NAB falls. So we do that. We do the picnic in September. The holiday party is usually December, if we can get it early enough in December to not wipe out every other company's holiday party, or late November, but then you got to avoid Thanksgiving, and I can't remember where Thanksgiving falls this year. But those are the three things that always wind up happening, and the other 9 we have to scramble. So for those of you that are out there and go to the website and get I can't remember what our info address is, if it's info@ or something, but we'll take any ideas that you have and try to flesh them out into something more useful.
Yeah, I want to echo all those sentiments, and also Fred's ability to try and put together educational programs for the Ennis workshops. One of the things we've been trying to do this year is bring in more of the IT part of this, because that's obviously the way the industry has gone and is going to continue to go. So if anybody has suggestions on presentations or topics that they want to see, please let us know.
By the way, NAB is the 3rd week of April next year. It was the 1st week this year. So we have 2 more weeks to work before the, to put things together this year.
All right. I want to do one other thing real quick. If anybody has a camera, if you can just turn your camera on for the next, minute, so that I can do one screen grab, because we usually try and do like a group picture at every meeting that we can do. So if you have a camera and you don't object, please turn it on. I'm hoping mine actually does turn on. Hey, what do you know? All right, I'll give it another just 30 seconds, just real quick, to see if anybody else has one. I appreciate everybody's cooperation. 1, 2, 3, say electrons. Electrons. All right, I got it. Thank you guys very, very much. feel free to turn your camera back off. And with that, I think that probably concludes the chapter business. I'm going to give it over to Dan Merwin of BroadcastTelecom and the presentation on software-defined WAN. And I really wish I had your bio in front of me so that I could read it and give you a proper introduction, but it's not in front of me. I forgot to bring it up.
Oh, I appreciate it. And thanks for having me. And thank you for saying that you're looking forward to it, which is always nice to hear. And especially, obviously, it's not a typical type of topic for SBE meetings, but as you also made reference to, things are going more in the direction of IT and IP, of course. So I think it is very timely, and I've been doing a bunch of other chapters. I'll talk a little bit about myself. I just wanted to leave my camera on for now because so my joke about how I got into broadcast engineering a couple of years ago because I heard that the industry needed fresh new blood. That makes sense. So let me go ahead and open up the presentation here. I'll turn my camera off for now. All right, let's see. And I did figure out a way, I believe, to not show you guys the notes, but for me to see them. I got to share my screen, of course. So yeah, so while I'm doing that, a lifelong telecom guy in various capacities. And like I made reference to a little over 2 years ago, I had a WYPR. Some of you may know Ray Hefner. He's been my customer for several years. And a couple of years ago, I thought I should learn more, at least about I was thinking maybe just learn more, get involved with the public radio, with public radio broadcasters around the country and learn more about it. And I love public radio. And so I went to the PREC and then followed by NEB a couple of years ago. And that prompted me to get involved in this industry. Let me see. There we go. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, sir, we can.
Okay, very good. And so then what I also started doing was doing some contract field engineering work. I'm hesitant to call myself an engineer, but for EMF out here in Colorado. And so that's been great as well, and an opportunity to meet lots of people and learn about the technology. So I do that part-time. But my primary gig is as a telecom agent, telecom and IT agent. And what that means is that I can bring in over a couple hundred providers to, I'm not going to give you that many to look at, but if an organization wants to take a look at a particular product, get some quotes, then I'm going to usually bring in a few providers and help figure out which is the best fit and help get the service implemented, and we get paid by the provider, so there's no charge to the customers. Yeah, so anyway, let me go on to the next slide. So yeah, so I've got this on presenter view, but then I have a virtual desktop, and so I'm doing the presentation on my local desktop on my Mac, and then I can toggle back to my virtual desktop to see the notes. So just to let you know how I resolve that issue. Now I got to find the notes. There they are. Okay. Let's move on. Oh, darn. Okay. Hang on, bear with me. There we go. Okay. So what is SD-WAN? Software-defined WAN. Software-defined networking is something that, a concept that originated about 20 years ago, and SD-WAN is pretty close to what it is. It involves more than just the actual network. It involves the wide area network. And it's over the past 15 or so years, it has become pretty much the predominant, or is in the process of becoming the predominant model or architecture model for networking. It's displaced a lot of MPLS and some private lines as well. You can also, it works with MPLS. Most of the providers enable an MPLS connection to work within to connect to the SD-WAN device and network. And so it enables actually a very easy migration path from MPLS to SD-WAN by doing it gradually, and running the two networks side by side so that you don't have an issue where you have a gap. So the chief characteristics of SD-WAN are that it's an application-aware, over-the-top WAN connectivity service. It uses policies to direct application flows, and it operates over multiple underlay networks. And again, MPLS is one, but generally, the idea is to use internet access and any type of internet access. So whether it be fiber-based, if you still have a T1, or cable, so a coax, satellite, LTE or 5G. So it gives a lot of flexibility in that respect. I got this quote from Jamie Till. This was in Tyline's newsletter, and I reached out to Jacob Daniluk over there, and he gave me the go-ahead to use this quote and a quote from him. And what Jamie did several years ago was decide that he was hearing about SD-WAN, and he decided he wanted to go down that road and save a bunch of money by not using leased fiber. And so he actually he went with a company called Sophos, and he deployed it himself. So it's a self-deployment, self-management. And I will talk a little bit about the differences between a self-managed solution and a carrier-managed solution. But anyway, he went, he's thinking about doing this. He went to Jacob at Tyline, and Jacob said, yeah, SD-WANs were no problem at all. And so that's what he's been doing, and he's been quite happy with it. But the iHeart and other large station groups have been moving to SD-WAN as well, and replacing RF STLs with SD-WAN. And then so basically what Jacob says is that, SD-WAN it works really well. And so, but it, looks to them like just any other traditional IP network. But because it, is high performing and reliable, obviously any vendor that is involved in the solution is going to be happy that the customer is using SD-WAN, because it's going to eliminate and mitigate a lot of the traditional problems that come with networking. I wanted to touch on what the primary drivers were for making SD-WAN basically the WAN type of WAN of choice these days. One is the fact that software as a service applications have very obviously taken over as the primary type of application, as opposed to applications residing in an organization's data center, whether it be their headquarters or in a third-party colocation facility. So certainly it was kind of inevitable that as people started moving to Office 365, Salesforce, Dropbox, any other software as a service, UCaaS, so Unified Communications as a Service, hosted voice over IP, and of course, any collaboration application like video and web conferencing. It was kind of inevitable that the technology needed to catch up and figure out how to make that work as well for any user anywhere as possible, and also to make it secure as well. And then also infrastructure as a service. So doing cloud computing, doing backup and restore in the major cloud providers, it has been another driver. It allows, so traditionally, what was a WAN? 20 years ago, essentially, at least for, medium businesses and larger enterprises, mostly they weren't accessing the internet directly from the branches because that presented security challenges, and there wasn't that much need for it, right? I mean, they were maybe, allowing people to access YouTube and whatnot, but not critical business applications. So what you had to do was go over the corporate WAN, which generally has been MPLS, back to the headquarters or the data center, and then out to the internet from there through the security stack at the data center. So it's called hairpinning. And that's obviously a very inefficient way to use bandwidth and to do networking. It's much more efficient just to run straight from the user's location to the internet. But that had to be done in such a way that it works, particularly for real-time applications, right? And so SD-WAN allows secure, optimized cloud access from any branch without backhauling traffic through the data center. And some other characteristics of SD-WAN are, one is the visibility capabilities that all of the providers allow for. It allows for the most effective and efficient troubleshooting. And it often enables network administrators and even just users to detect potential problems even before they happen. So visibility is a big thing, analytics as well. The advanced analytics allows network administrators to do what-if scenarios for planning on running certain applications over SD-WAN. Another driver is cost efficiency. It generally is a money saver, sometimes very much so. Legacy WANs, again, relied on expensive MPLS circuits and expensive MPLS routers and private lines. And SD-WAN enables use of lower cost broadband. And, the fact that internet has gotten much more higher performing over the years, much more reliable. It doesn't go down as much. The user doesn't bounce as much. For some people, it does. Some people are unlucky, in terms of the location they're at, but generally it works much better. There's less latency, less jitter, less packet loss, but it's still doesn't offer guarantees, right? And it doesn't offer a guarantee on QoS and latency and jitter and packet loss. And that's where SD-WAN comes in with the strategies of making that a non-issue. So it improves application performance with dynamic path selection. We'll take a look at this. Traffic shaping, forward area correction, and it prioritizes business critical apps and reroutes around congestion or outages in real time. Let me see. Just taking a look at my notes. Another thing about what SD-WAN has improved is, if someone was using split tunneling, if they're using a VPN, now, most businesses overall traditionally haven't used MPLS, they just use VPNs. And oftentimes split tunneling was used to enable a user or a branch to access the internet without going through the VPN, without going back to the VPN concentrator or firewall. But that introduces many potential security risks, including compromised data security, exposure to malware, loss of monitoring and control capabilities. And current VPN options don't provide continuous verification of a user's identity, and they lack the granular controls to limit access to only those resources that are authorized for a particular user. So from a security perspective, it was very, very difficult to manage, and it was vulnerable. And SD-WAN addresses that as well. Yeah, so, as SD-WAN vendors have been integrating security features like next-gen firewalls, encryption, segmentation, zero trust access, it's become really the full package. And there are some of the vendors, and we'll look at a little list of vendors, but Cisco with their Meraki platform, they purchased Meraki in, I believe, 2012. And then Viptela, they purchased Viptela in 2017, and that is their premier offering. So Cisco and Fortinet and other firewall manufacturers have actually a kind of a security first offering. And then all of the other SD-WAN vendors that more have been like a network first offering have all been wrapping security features around their products. So Gartner specifies 4 key capabilities as critical for SD-WAN: lightweight replacement for traditional WAN routers and support for multiple connection types, dynamic path selection for load sharing and policy-based operation, and a simple, intuitive WAN management and monitoring interface. And that's a big piece of it as well, as we'll see. And then support for secure VPNs. And they use, generally, most of them use IPsec, but they also use network segmentation. And there are other integrated third-party network services that can be bolted onto it. So just taking a look a little bit at the architecture and the terminology, the orchestrator / controller, depends on who the vendor is. Sometimes they call it both or just one, but that is the centralized GUI for setting it up and managing SD-WAN and having the visibility and getting the analytics and making very easy changes to push out to all of the edges. So the SD-WAN edge is a device. Usually it's a proprietary device, but it also can run on any machine that generally it's Linux. So it can just be software. And then the SD-WAN gateway, we'll talk about that. That is, some of the vendors have that, most of them do, but and it's not necessarily a feature that you might use, but the gateway enables the users to connect to the hyperscalers. So the large cloud providers like Amazon and Microsoft Azure and Google Cloud Platform, and with what's called a cloud on-ramp. So a very, they co-locate with the cloud provider. So with just a 1 or 2 millisecond delay, you can be at that cloud provider. Or also it worked for software as a service. You can co-locate with the Salesforce POP and get instant, or get superior performance with that application as well. And then application flow, we'll look at that as well. Internet breakout is basically just being able to connect to the internet directly from the branch site, and then virtual tunnels. That's pretty straightforward. It's just very high performing and very secure VPN that all of the SD-WAN providers enable. So the SD-WAN controller replaces having to use a CLI, replaces having to either go on site or use some type of software to connect to the routers on site, and it consolidates and centralizes the configuration provisioning data, and you can enable it to orchestrate to all WAN endpoints simultaneously. You can also have zero touch provisioning, which enables you to simply ship a device out and plug and play. So when it's plugged in, it's going to register with the provider and get an IP address and get all the policies. So it makes implementation extremely fast and easy. And the SD-WAN controller is a portal that generally is hosted by the provider, but sometimes it's just, if it's just strictly a software-based solution, well, if it's what is called a bookended solution that doesn't involve an SD-WAN gateway, then the controller can just be the software just running on your local machine. So the three types of SD-WAN architecture are bookended, gatewayed, and middle mile. So bookended, if you're doing a self-managed SD-WAN deployment, then it's going to be generally bookended. And basically what that means is you're just connecting from site to site, getting many of the benefits of, all the networking benefits of SD-WAN, but you just don't have the ability to maybe have the add-on security services and the cloud on-ramps that the gatewayed service offers, right? So bookended is just site to site. Gateway is site to site, but has the gateway that offers additional resiliency and then additional options. And then middle mile. So some of the providers have a private network. For example, Cato is one, and a bunch of them do, but mostly sort of the boutique providers that, basically all they do is offer SD-WAN, and that's their purpose for being. They offer a private network, so 10 to 15 milliseconds to get into their private network via the internet, and then 1 to 2 milliseconds to get to another POP. And if it's an international deployment, most of them have POPs around the world. And from their POPs, you can get into cloud providers and you can get additional services. But it does basically, it increases, it improves the performance and the security by keeping it off the internet and putting on their private network. And I'm just going back to my notes since I haven't presented like this before with my notes separately. I gotta figure out a better way to do this, but
you're doing great.
All right, thank you, appreciate it. Yeah, so let's see. Let me go back to just talking about what the orchestrator is. So for example, just to give you an idea, some of you might have used the Cisco tools before. So Viptela, for the management plane, uses something called vManage as the user interface, and then vBond for the orchestration and provisioning, which again is often zero-touch provisioning, and then vSmart resides in the control plane and does policy enforcement. It communicates via OMP, or Overlay Management Protocol. So those are Cisco's tools. And just to, again, touch on the fact that SD-WAN basically, sort of by definition, it separates out the control plane from the data plane. So instead of having everything integrated into the router, the management and control policies, that's separated out. So that's what makes SD-WAN work, is having the data plane be separate from the control plane, the management plane, for all of the functions that need to be done. And then the edge device, another thing about the edge device is that it can replace multiple devices and multiple applications. And so not only does it make the network simpler to manage and easier to get visibility and analytics on, but it also offers cost savings in that area as well. So it can replace the router, the firewall, the WAN acceleration device, and the VPN concentrator, or the DMVPN, which is Dynamic Multipoint VPN. So that's another major advantage of SD-WAN. Let's see, so moving on. So here's the gateway again, and we talked about it already, how it allows locations to connect to other services outside of the corporate WAN in the best possible manner. And then here are just some features. Most of these are optional. It depends on the vendor and the product. Again, with Cisco, whether it's Viptela or Meraki. So there's really so many things to look at when choosing an SD-WAN vendor. And when I get to that slide, I'll talk a little bit more about that. But BGP, routing support, DDoS mitigation, so another important security capability. Seamless WAN failover. Most of the providers offer that with their products, but not everyone. So, for example, with this call, with this meeting, if I were running SD-WAN, and if it were configured with seamless failover, and if I had 2 internet connections, which generally is what people do, 2 or more, even if my Comcast cable connection went down, then it would fail over to the backup, let's say 5G, for example, and it would be completely transparent to all of us. We would not even know that my primary internet connection went down. So per packet load balancing, well, I have some slides on this stuff as well. So yeah, here we go. So load balancing and link aggregation. So if you're running 2 connections that are, and neither one is like LTE or 5G, so you're not paying for data, then you can do load balancing with that as well, but you want to minimize the costs, right? So you could load balance across multiple links and avoid traffic overload on a link. However, SD-WAN has the ability to, in real time, to look upstream and see if there's any congestion, jitter, packet loss on any of the paths that are connected to the SD-WAN edge device. And it's going to pick a preferred link based on link characteristics. So, this is something that you provision ahead of time, but it's something that you can change anytime. You can change the policies anytime. And then packet replication is the best way to go. If you have enough bandwidth on both links, and again, if one of the links is if you have two links that neither of which you're paying for the throughput on, then you send the packets out over both links, and whichever link receives it, the packet last is just going to discard it. So this gives maximum redundancy and performance. Let's see. So I'm not going to read this whole slide, but if you look on the right-hand side, basically it's more summarizing the advantages of SD-WAN. Under visibility, for example, deep application layer visibility and analytics. So depending on who the vendor is and what the product is, the product, the edge device or the gateway it automatically detects what application it is, and anywhere between a few hundred and a few thousand applications. And it's going to set the policies and follow the policies based on the application. And yeah, so on the next few slides, I talk about the differences between managed SD-WAN and a self-managed SD-WAN. And it's a little bit redundant, but let me go over it a little bit. And then just keep in mind that depending on what provider you go with, a co-managed option is usually available. And that's the way a lot of people like to go. So you do have some control. You're not handing all the control over to the provider, but at the same time, you don't have all the headaches and all the responsibility for keeping everything working correctly. So if you use managed service, and this obviously applies to other types of management, but it's hands-off management, 24/7 support. It's going to be faster deployment. There are security features that the provider can provide that are not available just within the edge device. And then you have the single vendor accountability. So you have one throat to choke. But you do have less control. It's going to cost more money, obviously. And it's harder to switch vendors or customize the hardware or software, which is usually less of a concern. And then if it's a self-managed service, you define policies in the routing and security, and you can tailor the solution to specific business needs. But the vendor can do that also for you, and most vendors will. But again, it's an additional cost. And then you don't have the MSP fees, but you might have a higher CapEx. You might have a higher initial outlay. But you do need to have some level of experience and expertise with networking. And you're probably not going to be able to deploy new sites as quickly if you're doing it on your own. And then again, if something happens, something breaks, it's your team's job to fix it. And you might be able to call the provider, but it's probably going to take them longer to determine the problem and fix the problem than if you already had a management relationship with them. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about SASE, Secure Access Service Edge, which is sort of the newer buzzword. And basically what it is SD-WAN with security wrapped around it. And so you can see down below some of the features that you get with SASE that don't come in a traditional SD-WAN offering. And so actually the newest buzzword is single vendor SASE. So that, like with Fortinet, for example, is one vendor that does that. And so that you, again, easier time managing everything when you only have one vendor. So, basically, let me see if I have a slide on this. Yeah, so SASE promises the following. It's an improved end user experience, better performance, greater security, improved compliance, simplification of the security tools and integration. You have less disparate tools and vendors and applications to work with, and lower costs. And it does, so the improved security compliance, what that means is that users, if they don't have to go through a bunch of hoops to use this, to access whatever applications they need, to use their, to access the WAN, because it's all unified and simplified, there's going to be more compliance, and they're not going to try to go around the tools and not try to do like shadow IT by maybe using something like Dropbox when it's not a tool that the business uses. Also, I talked about this a little bit. Single vendor SASE. So, as security tools have become deployed more and more over time, secure web gateways, cloud access security brokers, EDR, it's just become sort of an inevitability that it would all be offered as a unified package. I also wanted to get into cost a little bit, just so you have an idea. Generally starts around $100 a month per site. And then part of the pricing methodology is based on throughput. So for the radio business, obviously, there's not a lot of bandwidth throughput. So it's generally going to be the lower end of this spectrum. But then if you have a provider that provides the middle mile, that provides a gateway with cloud on-ramps and other security services, then it's going to be skewed closer towards the higher figure. So you can see generally what Meraki is going to run, and VeloCloud, Fortinet with the FortiGate device. And then, you need to make the decision as to whether you want the proprietary physical appliance, or do you just want to run the software on your own equipment? And so you might have a CapEx outlay. But most of the providers will, allow it just to be a OpEx and roll that into the monthly fee. Talking about who the providers are, this is a very small list, but I didn't want to show you too many. There are literally hundreds of providers worldwide, because there's not that many platforms, but every telecom company, every ISP offers SD-WAN, and they usually offer at least a couple different types, whether it be Velo and Meraki and Viptela. Another big one is Versa. And so making a decision as to who you want to look at, let alone who to use, but who you want to look at and sort of put on the short list of providers is pretty difficult. And that's why a lot of people do choose to work with consultants, such as myself and my colleagues. And I have access to many sales engineers, solutions engineers with the technology service distributors that I work with, as well as all the different vendors. So It's not a problem getting an engineer on a call to talk through the requirements and then come up with a design, and then, follow-up calls about talking about the design and tweaking things. And that's what we do. Yeah. So I just wanted to give you an idea of who some of the providers and platforms are. And that is all I have.
All right, Dan, thank you very much. At this point, we usually open things up to questions. And
Yeah.
try not to monopolize with all of my questions. So anybody at all who has questions, please should chime in first.
Very good. Oh, and by the way, I'm not looking at well, let me now take a look at the window. I wasn't looking at the chat window.
I can tell you there's only one message, and it's from Hal Hosteller, and he said he had to go. So
yeah, I see it now. Yes, I see it now.
Anyone at all have questions before I ask questions?
Well, Dan, I've got a quick one. And I think it's because I've got like early exposure into something like this, and I want to just see how it changed. I retired about 3 years ago from Sirius XM, and we were getting ready to we were looking at SDN, not WAN, but
yeah,
we were basically going to change the routing of all the audio by driving it all into a big, wasn't a Cisco switch, it was the other large switch company that I suddenly cannot remember their name.
Juniper.
Well, Juniper was more of a WAN product.
Right. Yeah.
And this was the other large LAN product. And Sony had an orchestrator that had a direct interface to our Imagine automation system. And so this is essentially one use. The broadcast switcher, it didn't, also handle things like, cloud products and stuff like that. It didn't do any of the business systems, but it did have some interesting things that you could do, where they would build in rules, and you could pre-plan things. I remember one things we discovered we could do with it is, let's say that the Howard Stern show was on the road or at a remote studio. You could place rules into the system that would say, well, okay, no matter how bad things get in the network, this particular program must always have two paths. And we'll throw other things overboard to make sure that we always have a main path and a backup path.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that is similar on a WAN, that you can just say, give priorities.
Absolutely.
The other thing that was kind of helpful was if you got a notice from your service provider between New York and Washington, hey, this circuit is going to be subject to degrading, or between midnight and 6 a.m. tomorrow, you could tell your WAN orchestrator, hey, I want to be completely off of that circuit by 11 p.m. So as you're putting up new routes during the course of the day, just stop using that path so that by 11 p.m. there's no data on it. And then, okay, now that it's 6 a.m. and we've gotten the all clear from our provider, we can start offloading traffic from other places onto the previously questionable circuit. It sounds like this can kind of do the same thing, but in a WAN basis.
Yeah, that's basically SD-WAN. Again, grew out of SDN and applied to the WAN and all aspects of the WAN. And if you have something, if you have one of the links that is you pay for throughput on, like LTE or 5G, you can use it only as, you can set it to only as last resort. So you don't have to, so you minimize the costs, but You can also configure it for a certain period of time to be the primary connection or to be on an active configuration. So pretty much you can set it up any way that you like. But it's also, I think it's a semantic thing, because I know that some of the smaller SD-WAN providers, just maybe to differentiate themselves, they call it SDN, software defined networking. So, but yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but.
Yeah, it just sounds like the other trick here is that it's not, in our case, we were going to use it limited to the broadcast signals being routed, because if I remember right, the part of how it worked, which is probably not the same in a WAN. Matter of fact, we were having issues because the SD-WAN didn't really exist 3 years ago or 4 years ago as the SDN did. And so, we were just trying to figure out, well, how do we, this works great if we're in our Washington facility, but as soon as it hits the Juniper switch that goes to the telephone company to get to New York, we don't know how to do that. Clearly that's been addressed.
Right.
But it sounds like you could also lay all of your business, your business
Absolutely.
applications and stuff on it as well.
For sure. Yeah. And there's really no reason not to do that. If you're going to deploy it for your broadcast operations, then it's, not much more difficult to deploy it for the whole business. But, what you can do is just, deploy it maybe in parallel with the existing network and test it out with certain applications. And then, you can choose to maybe deploy it with some non-critical applications that the business office is using. And then once you're comfortable with it, then deploy it to for STLs and, whatever other broadcast applications. But yeah, it absolutely, definitely makes sense to do it for the whole enterprise, but it's something that can be done over time in a very systematic manner. Yeah. So, and so the question in the chat is, can SD-WAN bond multiple links to create a higher bandwidth virtual link? For example, if I have two 20 meg links to pass a 30 meg stream. Yeah, it's done essentially by doing load balancing over the two links. So you're using all the bandwidth that you have. Yeah.
Dan, one of the things you mentioned was about how many different providers there were and how a lot of people end up working with a consultant in order to help them figure out what the best choice would be. When it comes down to providers, is that largely situational and that there are certain providers that are better in certain situations than others? Or is it just that you've discovered that there are vendors that you prefer to work with for various reasons?
Yeah. There are differences in the products, right? So you want to make sure that you're looking at all of the differentiators in terms of the features and functionality they offer. And then, you have to, once you've decided upon, let's say you decide you want to use Cisco Viptela, because for whatever reason, you have to decide who do you want to use, right? Do you want to use Cisco? Do you want to use Cisco directly? Or do you want to use one of the many hundreds of different providers that resell it? And that, and so we do, in the business, we do have certain providers that we're, have not been having good experiences with. And so we steer people away from those providers. But if you have, let's say your network is with, let's say you have MPLS with AT&T, and you want to start gradually migrating off of the MPLS network, but you have a contract with AT&T where you have contracted for a certain spend the next couple of years, then you might want to use AT&T. Or if you have if you have an account team at AT&T that you have a really good relationship with, and you've a service manager that's responsive, and if you're a big enough business to have that, and you've had good experiences with them, then maybe that's the way to go. But or you can use a smaller MSP that resells that product. So there's really a whole bunch of things to look at. Feature functionality, the customer service, is the customer service onshore, offshore, and yeah.
You mentioned that there are a number.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry. I was just going to say that's why, I think it makes sense at least to look at least 3 vendors initially and compare the advantages and disadvantages, and then narrow it down and figure out which is the best way to go. And sometimes it, obviously it comes down to cost a lot of the time as well. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead, James.
If you're doing something like an ad hoc, or not ad hoc, but if you're doing something like a regional network for, say, baseball, and you have stations that use the service that range from fairly good-sized markets to towns that, don't have one traffic light yet, is it practical to try to have an SD-WAN network to handle the distribution, or is that just a pipe dream?
Well, that kind of depends on you mean from a budgetary perspective? Or?
Yeah, from a practicality, can you do it? And of course, I realize that if you spend enough money, you can do almost anything. But yeah. I'm thinking, rather than have to try to ensure satellite availability to every one of a number of diverse locations, if you can possibly push it off to a vendor or to a group of vendors to do via, I'll call it commercial data delivery.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, satellite obviously is going to be an option everywhere, right? Mm-hmm. And then generally, if it's not 5G, then you generally can get LTE. And so even if there's no fiber to the location, you can get, fixed, or if you don't have line of sight from your studio, then you can get, fixed wireless or 5G LTE, Starlink, Viasat even, and and go with an SD-WAN. Certainly for the smaller sites, you probably can use a pretty small edge device. So it's not going to cost a huge amount of money, but there's no reason not to do it if you can justify the expense of whatever it is, a few $100s a month, 3, 4. I mean, I guess the thing about Starlink, I guess it's around $140 a month. I mean, I can resell it through various companies, but if you go through Starlink and basically want to be on your own, then $140 a month for Starlink, that gives you 40 gig, I believe, and then whatever else, maybe 5G on a data plan that's not too high, or maybe a pooled data plan, so that you can pool the data between all your locations if it needs to go over to 5G or LTE, and and then the cost of the device itself. So fairly inexpensive, and certainly no reason not to do it as long as you can get management to sign off on it. Because it's going to give you, you're not going to get all the benefits from it. But it's still going to give you the best possible performance out of IP delivery that you can possibly get, even if you're not using the gateway and whatnot. And then you can wrap security services around it quite easily, again, in a single device. So it does enable you to consolidate devices at the transmitter site or wherever. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
One of the things you brought up in your presentation was the way to try and help avoid shadow IT, which I have to say, at least the place where I work, has become more and more of a big deal as users have ended up having to figure out, both for reasons because it's either difficult to do in the environment that we're given, or because you can't get someone to support you and help you. So anything that makes it easier for the end user to actually accomplish what they need to accomplish, but still stay secure, is always going to be a good thing.
Good. I appreciate that feedback. And certainly, if anyone thinks of any questions or comments after the presentation, I will send the deck out along with my contact information. I guess, William, if I send that to you, you can send out to the whole chapter.
So what we'll do, we'll post the deck on our website, right. And if your contact information is just like on the last slide, that'll help prevent it from being crawled and you getting billions of email spams. Okay, great. So so certainly feel free to reach out to me for anything. And I'm not really a network engineer, but I will do whatever it takes to get answers for you. And there's no obligation, no pressure. So. No, that's great. I really appreciate you taking the time to do the presentation.
Yeah, Dan, I had a question. Do you go to NAB? Would you be willing to do a modified presentation like this?
100%. I went the past 2 years. I wasn't able to make it this year because I had some conflicts, but Fred, I would love to have that conversation with you. Yeah.
We'd probably, you're very agnostic. That's fine. Maybe, a little bit, not just specific to radio, but to media in general.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, like 30 to 35 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
As part of a seminar and
yes, as part of as part of a 2-day workshop for media over IP, applications of, once you get your system, how do you get it to other locations, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wide area networks between locations, campuses, that type of thing.
Yeah. Great. Send me an email or I'll reach out to you, but I'd love to plan that for sure.
Yeah. We were looking for something like that this year and we didn't quite get to it, but if you're interested, that would be the Ennis workshop. It's 2 days before the show floor opens.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Just let us know if you can handle that. Thanks.
Thank you.
One quick fun story. Many years ago, I was trying to put in a fiber circuit at a transmitter site. And I want to say we went with Comcast, but it's been so many years, I can't remember. But it was up in Maryland, and I was really just trying to get connectivity from Virginia. And the way they ended up routing it was I went from Virginia to Maryland to North Carolina, back up to Maryland. So you refer to this as a hairpin. We used to call it a paperclip because it felt like it was kept going around and around and around.
Yeah.